The email landed on a Thursday afternoon while I was halfway through a stack of grand jury indictments in my office at the U.S. Attorney's headquarters in downtown Boston. Sarah, your sister Melissa is co-chairing the Children's Hospital Gala on Saturday with Amanda Richardson, Congressman Richardson's wife. This is a critical networking event for Melissa's interior design business. Elite clients will be there. You are not to attend. Your presence would be embarrassing given your situation. Melissa has worked too hard to have you ruin this for her. Mother, my situation. That was what Mom called it when I left Morrison & Price, one of Boston's most prestigious corporate firms, 3 years ago. I'd been on the partner track, corner office in sight, making $320,000 a year. Then I'd walked away to become an assistant U.S. attorney starting at $90,000, later promoted to $147,000 to prosecute federal crimes. You're throwing away your career, Mom had said on the phone. For what? To play hero, to do work that matters, I'd replied. She hung up on me. My younger sister Melissa had been delighted. With me out of the successful spotlight, she could finally be the star. She built a boutique interior design firm for Boston's elite, worked the charity gala circuit, joined the right clubs, married the right man, Connor Walsh, a hedge fund manager. Beacon Hill townhouse. Hampton summers, they were exactly what our family wanted. I lived in a modest Cambridge condo. I worked 70-hour weeks prosecuting organized crime, corruption, and financial fraud. I had a security detail because 3 separate criminal organizations had sent credible death threats. Mom called it throwing my life away. I deleted her email and went back to the RICO file on my desk. We were 3 weeks out from trial against a Boston crime family. The evidence was strong. 2 mid-level associates had flipped. Convictions looked likely. My phone buzzed with a text. Melissa, Mom told you about Saturday, right? Please don't come. Amanda Richardson is everything for my business. Her friends are my target clients. I can't have my prosecutor sister scaring everyone away. I typed me, congratulations on co-chairing. Hope it goes well, Melissa. That's not an answer. Promise me you won't show up. Me, I won't crash your event, Melissa. Melissa, good, because honestly, Sarah, you made your choice. You chose criminals over family. Let those of us who made smart choices have this. I set the phone down and tried not to let it sting. Kevin, my paralegal, appeared in the doorway. The Richardson documents just came in, the congressman's financial disclosures for the last 5 years. You wanted them for the Phillips corruption case. Leave them on my desk. Thanks, he hesitated. You okay? You look annoyed. Family stuff, the why aren't you making more money conversation. Followed by the stay away from my important event conversation. Kevin winced. Ouch, for what it's worth, boss, you're prosecuting people who have terrorized communities for decades. That's worth more than any corner office. After he left, I picked up my phone and scrolled to Amanda Richardson. Amanda and I had been roommates at Harvard Law. We survived 1L together, trading outlines and takeout and panic. After graduation, she clerked for a federal judge, then married James Richardson, now the U.S. Congressman for Massachusetts's 5th District. We stayed close, coffee every few months, text check-ins. She knew about my work. I knew about her children's health advocacy, her foundation, her role as a congressional spouse. My family had no idea we were friends. They'd never asked about law school. They'd barely asked about my life since I left Morrison & Price. They were still busy being disappointed I'd chosen Harvard over Yale, where Dad's college roommate sat on the board. I opened Amanda's last text from 2 weeks earlier. Amanda, lunch soon, I miss you. Also, random question. Are you related to Melissa Chin? She's co-chairing the hospital gala with me. Me, yes. My younger sister, how's that going? Amanda, she's enthusiastic, talks a lot about connections and networking opportunities. Very different energy from you. Me, we're very different. Amanda, I'll say. Listen, you should come to the gala. I'd love to catch up and it's for a good cause. Me, I'll think about it. Now I stared at Mom's email and Melissa's texts, then made a decision. Me, is the invitation still open for Saturday? Amanda, absolutely. I'll add you to the VIP list. I'm so glad you're coming. Me, one question. Does my family know we're friends? Amanda, your sister. No, I don't think so. She's never mentioned you except to say you work in law enforcement. Why? Me, long story. See you Saturday. Growing up, I'd been the golden child, valedictorian, Harvard Law, a federal clerkship with Judge Patricia Morrison of the First Circuit, one of the most respected appellate judges in the country. Then I made my mistake. Instead of joining Morrison & Price, where Dad had lined up interviews, I accepted a position at the U.S. Attorney's office. You're turning down $320,000 to make $90,000, Mom demanded. For what? To prosecute the people who hurt communities. To use my education to protect people who can't protect themselves. That's naive, Sarah, you're naive. Melissa, 23 and fresh out of design school, had smiled. At last she wasn't in my shadow. In the 3 years since I built a reputation, I'd prosecuted a state senator for corruption, dismantled a human trafficking ring, secured convictions against organized crime figures who'd operated with impunity for decades. At 32, I'd been promoted to senior assistant U.S. attorney. My boss had already told me he'd recommend me for a federal judgeship when a seat opened. My family knew only that I'd left the good job. They didn't know about the commendations, the cases that made the New York Times, or that defense attorneys who'd once been my peers now called me one of the best prosecutors in New England. They'd never asked. Amanda knew. She texted after every major case. Saw the news, you're incredible. When an especially serious death threat led to FBI protection, she called immediately. Are you safe? What do you need? That was what real friends did. On Friday evening my phone rang. Sarah, I am so excited you're coming tomorrow, Amanda said, but I need to warn you. Your sister's been telling people she's the successful chin sister with the important career. I don't think she knows what you actually do. She knows I'm a prosecutor. She told someone you work in local law enforcement. Sarah, you're a federal prosecutor. You work for the U.S. Attorney's office. Those are very different things. I haven't corrected her, I admitted. Why not? Because I got tired of defending my choices. Let her think what she wants. Amanda was quiet for a beat. You know James and I are hosting, right? If your family treats you poorly tomorrow, I won't tolerate it. You're my friend. You're also one of the most accomplished lawyers I know. Amanda, I mean it, you clerked for Judge Morrison. You've prosecuted cases that changed policy. The Attorney General mentioned you in a speech last month as an example of excellence in public service. I'm not going to let your family diminish that. After we hung up, I sat in my quiet apartment, suddenly unsure if going was a mistake. My boss, U.S. Attorney Richard Chin, no relation, had a different view when I mentioned the gala during our weekly briefing. You should go, he said. Amanda Richardson is an important advocate for issues we care about. Her husband sits on House Judiciary. Those relationships matter. My family will be there. The family that doesn't speak to you because you chose public service, that would be the one, he gave a grim smile. Then they should see what you've become, not to prove anything to them, he held my gaze, but to remind yourself you're a damn fine prosecutor, Sarah. Don't let anyone make you forget that. Saturday, the gala. The Four Seasons ballroom glittered, crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, black-tie guests. Tickets were $1,000 a plate. I wore a navy gown I usually reserved for conferences and arrived at 7:15 p.m. at the entrance. Melissa stood beside Amanda, greeting guests. Melissa looked flawless in an emerald dress, her blonde hair perfectly styled. She was in mid-conversation with an older couple, gesturing elegantly as she talked about timeless design principles. Amanda spotted me first, her face lit up. Sarah, she crossed the marble foyer and pulled me into a hug. You look beautiful, I'm so glad you're here. Melissa's head snapped around, her smile froze. Sarah. What are you doing here? Amanda invited me, I said evenly. You two know each other, Melissa's voice wobbled. Amanda laughed. Know each other. Sarah was my roommate at Harvard Law. We've been friends for over a decade, best friends actually. Melissa went pale. Come meet everyone, Amanda said, looping her arm through mine. You know Congressman Richardson, of course. James Richardson, tall, silvering at ease in his tux, shook my hand. Ms. Chin, Amanda talks about you constantly. It's wonderful to finally meet in person. The pleasure's mine, Congressman. Please, James, he said. Anyone who helped Amanda survive 1L earns first-name status. He turned to the couple Melissa had been entertaining. May I introduce Sarah Chin? She's a senior assistant U.S. attorney, one of the finest prosecutors in Massachusetts. Sarah, this is Robert and Alina Whitmore. Robert Whitmore's eyebrows shot up. The Sarah Chin who prosecuted the Giordano case? Yes, sir. Remarkable work, he said. That conviction sent shock waves through organized crime in New England. I followed the trial closely, Alina added, and the Senator Morrison corruption case. My husband and I have supported anti-corruption initiatives for years. Your work has been invaluable. Over Robert's shoulder, I saw Melissa standing motionless, mouth slightly open. Come on, Amanda said. The hospital's board chair has been asking about you since she heard you were coming. As we walked away, I glanced back. Melissa looked like she'd been slapped. The next hour was surreal. Amanda took me from table to table. The hospital board chair wanted to talk about the human trafficking case. A philanthropist asked thoughtful questions about federal, state cooperation in white-collar prosecutions. A retired judge told me he'd read one of my appellate briefs and found it masterfully argued. "You didn't tell me you were famous," Amanda teased when we finally stole a quiet moment near the bar. "I'm not famous, I'm just good at my job," Sarah, the Attorney General, quoted you in a speech. That's famous in legal circles. Across the room, I spotted Melissa with my parents who had arrived late. Mom's mouth was pinched in confusion. Dad looked distinctly uncomfortable. At 8:30, Amanda tapped her champagne glass. Conversations faded as she stepped onto the small stage at the front of the ballroom. "Good evening, everyone," her voice carried easily. "Thank you so much for supporting Children's Hospital tonight. I'm thrilled to be co-chairing this event with Melissa Chin." She gestured toward my sister, who managed a wavering smile. "And I'm especially grateful that so many community leaders and public servants could join us." She spoke about the hospital's work, the funds already pledged, the families helped. "Before we continue, I want to recognize some special guests," she said. "We have several people here tonight who devote their lives to public service. They could make more money elsewhere, but they choose to serve. I have profound respect for that choice." Her eyes found mine. "My dear friend Sarah Chin is here tonight." For those who don't know, Sarah is a senior assistant U.S. attorney who prosecutes some of the most complex federal crimes in our state. She's taken on organized crime, corruption, human trafficking, cases that require extraordinary courage and skill. "Sarah, could you stand?" My heart hammered. I rose slowly. Applause swelled. It wasn't the polite three-clap variety. It built and deepened. Robert Whitmore stood. Others followed. Within seconds, half the room was on its feet. From across the ballroom, I saw Mom go white. Dad stared at me like he'd never seen me before. Melissa looked like she might cry. Amanda waited for the noise to subside. Sarah clerked for Judge Patricia Morrison, one of the most respected jurists in the country. She graduated from Harvard Law with honors. She's been recommended for a federal judgeship. And she's also my best friend from law school, the person who helped me survive the hardest 3 years of my education. She lifted her glass. "To public servants like Sarah, who remind us that success isn't measured in dollars but in impact. Thank you, Sarah, for everything you do." Another round of applause. I sat, my face burning. Amanda stepped off the stage and came straight to my table. "Was that too much? I probably should have warned you." "It's fine," I managed. "Thank you, your family looks shocked," she said, glancing toward them. "They didn't know, they never asked, they never," her expression hardened. "Excuse me a moment." 10 minutes later, Mom approached my table. Her expression was composed, but her hands trembled slightly as she sat. "Sarah, may I speak with you?" "Of course." She smoothed her dress. "I didn't realize you knew Amanda Richardson. We were roommates at Harvard. You never mentioned that. You never asked about law school." She flinched. "And your work." "Amanda said you're a federal prosecutor, senior assistant U.S. attorney," I said. "Yes, I've been with the office for 3 years, but you left Morrison and Price." She sounded bewildered. "You gave up a partnership to prosecute what exactly?" "Federal crimes," I said quietly. "Organized crime, public corruption, human trafficking, financial fraud. I work for the U.S. Attorney's office." Her mouth opened and closed. "We thought you said you were going into prosecution. We assumed you meant local courts, a district attorney's office." "Something like that. I'm a federal prosecutor, Mom. I work for the United States government. My cases are in federal court, the people you saw standing and applauding. Many of them have followed my work or support the issues I prosecute, anti-corruption, anti-trafficking, that kind of thing." She stared at me, genuinely at sea. "Why didn't you tell us?" "I did," I said. "When I took the job, I explained exactly what it was. You told me I was throwing my life away. After that, I stopped trying to explain." "But a federal judgeship," she said faintly. "Amanda said you've been recommended. The U.S. attorney recommended me when the next vacancy opens. It's not guaranteed, but yes, I'm on the list." Mom leaned back. "I don't understand. You gave up $320,000 to make what?" "I make $147,000 now," I said. "I was promoted last year. That's less than half. And I'm doing work that matters to me. I've put people in prison who hurt communities for decades. I've protected victims who had nowhere else to turn. I clerked for one of the most respected judges in the country. I'm building a reputation as someone who can handle the hardest cases. That's worth more to me than money, but we thought, she swallowed, we thought you defailed. I know, I met her eyes, you didn't ask, you didn't want to know. You decided who I was, and I let you believe it because I was tired of defending myself. Melissa appeared at my elbow, eyes red and blotchy. Sarah, I need to talk to you. Mom half rose, then sat back as Melissa dropped into the chair beside me. I told everyone you worked in law enforcement, Melissa said in a rush. Like a police officer, I didn't know you were a federal prosecutor. I didn't know you were this. She gestured vaguely around the room, where people were still glancing at me with open respect. I tried to tell you more than once, I said. You weren't interested, because you left the firm, she said, voice cracking. You gave up everything. I gave up a job I hated to do work I love. That's not failure, Melissa, she wiped her eyes. Amanda Richardson is my biggest networking opportunity. These people are my target clients. And now they all know you're my sister, the federal prosecutor who clerked for a famous judge and's being recommended for a judgeship. How am I supposed to compete with that? This isn't a competition. It is to Mom and Dad, it always has been. And I finally had something where I was the successful one, where I was the one they bragged about. And now, her voice broke. Now they'll tell everyone you're this. I've been this for 3 years, I said quietly. You just didn't ask. Dad arrived then, tugging at the collar of his tux. Sarah, that was quite an introduction Amanda gave you. Yes, federal prosecutor, he cleared his throat. I have to admit I didn't fully understand what you were doing. I explained it, I said. When I left Morrison and Price, I told you I was going to the U.S. Attorney's office. I suppose I thought it was a lateral move to a less prestigious position. It was a move to the most prestigious criminal prosecution office in the state, I said. Federal prosecutors handle the cases local offices can't. Organized crime, corruption, multi-state fraud. These aren't small cases, Dad. He adjusted his glasses. The Whitmore Foundation donated $50,000 tonight. Robert Whitmore spent 20 minutes talking about your work on the Giordano case. He called it a landmark prosecution. It was a significant RICO case, I said. Why didn't you tell us about these successes? I laughed, a short, bitter sound. You told me I was throwing my life away. You haven't asked about my work in 3 years. You didn't invite me to family events because I might bring down the mood with my unfortunate career choice. Why would I share my successes with people who'd already decided I'd failed? His face reddened. We were concerned about your future. No, you were concerned about status, about what you could tell your friends. My daughter, the federal prosecutor who clerked for prestigious judges, didn't sound as impressive as my daughter, the partner at Morrison and Price. Not until tonight. When you finally understood what federal prosecution means. That's not fair, he said automatically. Isn't it? I asked. Mom sent me an email telling me to stay away from tonight because my situation would embarrass Melissa. My situation, my career prosecuting federal crimes and serving my country is something to hide. Sarah, excuse me, Amanda's voice cut in gently. She stood at my shoulder. I'm so sorry to interrupt, but there's someone I'd like you to meet. Judge Morrison is here. She came as a surprise guest. My heart stuttered. Judge Patricia Morrison? Yes. She heard you were attending and wanted to say hello. She's at the VIP table. I murmured an apology to my father and followed Amanda across the ballroom. At a corner table sat Judge Patricia Morrison, elegant in a deep purple gown, silver hair swept back. She rose when she saw me. Sarah Chin. How wonderful to see you. Judge Morrison, this is an honor, I said, feeling abruptly 25 again. The honor is mine, she replied. I've been following your work. The Phillips corruption case, that was masterful, and your RICO prosecution against the Giordano family used precedents I set 15 years ago. You built on them beautifully. Thank you, Your Honor. Your opinions were foundational to our strategy, she smiled. I heard through the grapevine that you're on the list for the next federal appointment, the U.S. Attorney was kind enough to recommend me, I said. Nothing's guaranteed. Richard Chin doesn't give recommendations lightly, she said. He told me you're one of the finest legal minds he's worked with. She paused. When the time comes, I'll be calling the Senate Judiciary Committee myself. You clerked for me. I know your work. You'd make an excellent judge. Behind me, I heard a soft gasp. I turned. Melissa stood a few feet away, champagne glass in hand, clearly having followed us. Judge Morrison noticed her. And you are Melissa Chin, Sarah's sister. Her voice was barely audible. The interior designer. Amanda mentioned I'm co-chairing tonight. Wonderful work for a wonderful cause, the judge said graciously. The hospital is fortunate to have you. Thank you, Your Honor. Judge Morrison turned back to me. Sarah, let's have lunch soon. I want to discuss the appellate brief you filed last month. Your Fourth Amendment arguments were particularly innovative. I'd be honored, I said. After she returned to her table, Melissa grabbed my arm. A federal judge just said she's going to call the Senate for you, she whispered. Sarah, do you understand what that means? It means she thinks I'd be a good judge. It means you're going to be a federal judge before you're 35. Do you have any idea how rare that is? It's going to happen. Everyone here knows it. Robert Whitmore told me you're one of the brightest legal minds of your generation. Eleanor Whitmore asked if you were related to me, and when I said you were my sister, she said, "You must be so proud." Melissa's eyes filled, and I realized I've never once been proud of you. I've only been jealous. The gala wound down around midnight. I was collecting my coat when Amanda found me. Leaving so soon, she asked. It's been a long night. Sarah, I'm sorry if I put you on the spot with that introduction, she said. Your family was treating you like you were an embarrassment, and I couldn't stand it. You're not an embarrassment, you're extraordinary. Thank you, I said, for having my back always. She hugged me. Coffee next week. I want to hear everything about the Phillips case. James is fascinated. He's considering legislation based on the corruption patterns you exposed. I'd love that. I turned to go and Mom appeared again. Sarah, may I drive you home? I'd like to talk. I have my car, please. We drove through Boston in silence for 10 minutes, city lights blurring past before she spoke. I owe you an apology, she said at last. A significant one. Mom, no, let me finish. Her hands clenched the steering wheel. Your father and I have spent 3 years treating you like you made a mistake. Like you dethrone away your potential. Tonight I watched federal judges, congressmen, philanthropists, and some of the most powerful people in Boston treat you with genuine respect. Not because of money or status, but because of your work, because you're good at what you do, because what you do matters. I stayed quiet. Judge Morrison clerked for Supreme Court Justice William Brennan, Mom said. I looked her up while you were talking to the Whitmores. She's one of the most respected appellate judges in the country. And she thinks you should be a federal judge. She's being kind, I said automatically. She's not kind, Sarah. She's known for being brilliant and exacting. If she says you should be a judge, she means it. We stopped at a red light. Mom stared straight ahead. I've been so focused on traditional markers of success, corner offices, salaries, partnership tracks, I didn't see what you were building, she said. You've accomplished more by 32 than most lawyers do in entire careers, and I've been treating you like a disappointment. You have, I said quietly. I'm sorry, she whispered. Truly, deeply sorry. I appreciate that, I said, but an apology doesn't erase 3 years of being told I'm an embarrassment, of being excluded from family events. Of hearing that I threw my life away. I know, she said, and I don't expect you to forgive me immediately, but I want to do better. I want to understand what you do. I want to be proud of you the way I should have been all along. She pulled up in front of my building and put the car in park. Before I could open the door, she spoke again. Judge Morrison mentioned an appellate brief you filed. Would you be willing to explain it to me sometime? I'd like to understand your work. I looked at her, really looked. She seemed smaller than I remembered, older. If you're going to be part of my life, I said, you need to accept that I chose this career because it's what I want. Not because I failed at something else, not because I'm settling, because prosecuting federal crimes is what I'm meant to do. I understand. Do you? I asked. Because until tonight, you thought I was an embarrassment. Tomorrow, when the glow of the gala wears off, will you still think I made the right choice? Or will you go back to wishing I'd taken the corporate job? She was quiet a long moment. Tonight I watched my daughter receive a standing ovation from some of the most influential people in Boston, she said finally. I watched a federal judge you clerked for say she'll recommend you for an appointment. I watched a congressman's wife call you her best friend and introduce you as one of the finest prosecutors in the state. And I realized I've been measuring success with the wrong ruler. That sounds nice, Mom, I said, but words are easy. 3 years of actions say otherwise. Then let me show you through actions, she said. Starting tomorrow, starting now. I was suddenly exhausted. Good night, Mom. Sarah, one more thing, she called as I stepped out. Melissa is devastated, not because you outshone her, though you did, but because she realized she's never really known you. None of us have. We've been so busy judging your choices that we never asked who you actually are. No, I agreed. You didn't. Sunday morning, I woke to 15 missed calls and 43 text messages. Melissa, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Can we talk, Dad? Very proud of what you've accomplished. I should have said that years ago. Mom, coffee this week. I want to hear about your work, really hear about it. Aunt Carol, your mother told me you're a federal prosecutor. Why didn't anyone tell me? Amanda, people are still talking about you. The Whitmore Foundation wants to discuss supporting federal prosecution initiatives. Call me. Judge Morrison's clerk, Judge Morrison would like to schedule lunch. Please contact Chambers to arrange. I ignored most of them and went for a run along the Charles. When I got back, there was a text from Kevin. Kevin, boss, you're trending on legal Twitter. Someone posted about Judge Morrison's comments last night. #Federal Prosecutorgals is blowing up. I groaned. The last thing I needed was social media attention, but when I checked, it wasn't what I'd feared. The tweets were from other prosecutors, law students, public defenders, legal commentators, people in the legal community celebrating public service. At Legal Eagle, Judge Morrison calling for Sarah Chin's appointment is huge. Chin's work on organized crime and corruption is textbook. This is what excellent prosecution looks like. At Harvard Law, just read about Sarah Chin, federal prosecutor at 29, recommended for judgeship at 32. She's the reason I want to do public interest law. At Public Defender Ma, Chin and I are on opposite sides, but I respect the hell out of her work. Fair, ethical, brilliant, she'd make an outstanding judge. My phone rang. U.S. Attorney Richard Chin. Sarah, I'm getting calls about last night, he said, amused. What happened? Amanda Richardson introduced me at a charity gala, I said. It got more attention than expected. He chuckled. Judge Morrison called me this morning. She's moving forward with her Senate recommendation. She said, and I quote, Sarah Chin is exactly the kind of prosecutor who should be on the bench. Smart, principled, and unafraid of hard cases. I don't know what to say, sir. Say you'll accept if the appointment comes through, he replied. We need judges like you, Sarah. People who chose this work because it matters, not because it's a stepping stone. After we hung up, I sat on my couch and let it all wash over me. 3 years earlier, I'd walked away from prestige and money to do work I believed in. My family had called it a failure. They'd excluded me, dismissed me, treated me like an embarrassment. In those same 3 years, I'd built something real. I'd prosecuted cases that changed lives. I'd earned the respect of judges, colleagues, and even my opponents. I'd made a difference. That, I realized, was what success actually looked like. On Monday, Melissa showed up at my office unannounced. The receptionist said you were in trial, she said, looking around at the beige walls and battered government furniture. But your paralegal said you had 15 minutes between sessions. What are you doing here, Melissa? I came to apologize, actually apologize. Not just text you, she sat down without waiting for an invitation. I've spent 3 years thinking I'd finally escaped your shadow, she said, that I was the successful one. The one Mom and Dad were proud of. And then Saturday happened and I realized I've never been in your shadow. I've been living in complete ignorance of who you actually are. Melissa, no, let me finish, she took a breath. You prosecute organized crime, you put mobsters in prison. You've had death threats serious enough for FBI protection. I saw the security detail outside this building, Sarah. You're doing actual dangerous, important work. And I've been calling you a failure because you don't make as much money as I wanted you to. We were just focused on different measures of success, I said. I was focused on the wrong measures, she said bluntly. Completely wrong, she wiped her eyes. Judge Morrison sat next to me at dinner after you left. She told me about your work. About a human trafficking case where you saved 17 women. About a corruption case that changed state policy. About how you could have stayed at Morrison and Price and made millions, but you chose to serve instead. She said that, I asked softly. She said you're one of the finest examples of what a law degree should be used for, Melissa said. Then she asked me if I understood how rare it is to have a sibling who's genuinely changing the world. Her voice broke. I said I didn't. Because I've been too busy being jealous to notice. I didn't know what to say. Can we start over? She asked. Can I actually get to know my sister, the real one? Not the failure I invented in my head. Maybe, I said carefully, but Melissa, I'm not going to defend my career anymore. I'm not going to apologize for choosing public service. If you're going to be part of my life, you need to accept that this is what I do. I do accept it, she said. Finally, I actually do. Over the next 3 months, things shifted slowly. Mom started asking about my cases. I couldn't share details, but she asked about the work itself, the challenges, what it meant to prosecute federal crimes. She came to a public lecture I gave at Harvard Law on corruption prosecutions and sat in the front row, taking notes. Dad sent me an article about federal judicial appointments with a handwritten note, "Proud of you, should have said this years ago. Melissa invited me to coffee every week." She asked about law school, about my friendship with Amanda, about how I'd chosen this path. She stopped comparing our careers. Judge Morrison and I had lunch once a month. She mentored me on appellate strategy, judicial temperament, and the realities of life on the bench. Amanda became an even closer friend. We worked together on criminal justice reform initiatives. James introduced legislation based on patterns I'd uncovered in corruption cases. In March, a federal judgeship opened in the District of Massachusetts. The U.S. Attorney formally submitted my name. Judge Morrison called the Senate Judiciary Committee. Amanda's husband, now a ranking member of the committee, publicly supported my nomination. In June, at 33 years old, I was confirmed as a United States District Court judge. The investiture ceremony was on a Tuesday morning. The courthouse was packed, my team from the U.S. Attorney's office filled 3 rows. Colleagues, public defenders I'd argued against, even a few former defendants I'd prosecuted who wanted to witness the moment, all were there. Judge Morrison administered the oath. "Do you solemnly swear," she asked, "that you will administer justice without respect to persons and do equal right to the poor and to the rich? And that you will faithfully and impartially discharge and perform all the duties incumbent upon you as United States District Judge under the Constitution and laws of the United States?" "So help you God, I do," I said. My family sat in the front row. Mom cried openly. Dad beamed. Melissa smiled through tears. At the reception afterward, Mom pulled me aside. "3 years ago, I told you that you dethrone your life away," she said. "I remember." "I was wrong," she said. "Catastrophically, painfully wrong. You didn't throw anything away. You built something extraordinary, and I'm sorry it took me so long to see it." "Thank you, Mom," I said. "Your Honor," she corrected, smiling through her tears. "I have to call you that now." Amanda appeared with 2 glasses of champagne. "Judge Chin has a nice ring to it," she said. "It still feels surreal," I admitted. "It shouldn't," she said. "You earned this every single step." She raised her glass to my best friend from Harvard Law. The one who chose the hard path, the meaningful path, and showed everyone what success actually looks like. I looked around the courthouse, the colleagues who'd supported me. The family who finally understood me, the friends who'd believed in me all along and realized something. I had never needed their validation to succeed. But having it now, after 3 years of being called a failure, felt pretty damn good.